The great hall of Nexus Prime buzzed with the voices of 1,000 different species. Representatives from across the galaxy had come to hear the Zephyrian Empire's latest proposal. Their ships filled the space around the station like a metal forest, each one carrying delegates eager to expand their territory and wealth. Ambassador Kethvar stood at the center of the hall. His blue skin gleamed under the bright lights, and his forearms moved in grand gestures as he spoke. The Zephyrians were proud of their power. They had conquered over 300 worlds in the past century alone. Fellow beings of the galaxy, Kethvar announced, his voice carrying across the vast chamber. Today we propose the greatest expansion in galactic history. The Outer Rim holds countless worlds rich with resources, worlds that sit empty and unused while our civilizations hunger for growth. The crowd murmured with interest. Many species supported the Zephyrian expansion plans. After all, they would get their share of the profits from mining operations and trade routes. Kethvar activated a holographic display that showed a map of the galaxy's edge. Red dots marked potential targets for colonization. These systems contain everything we need: rare metals, energy sources, and perfect conditions for new settlements. Most are uninhabited. Those that do contain life forms show only primitive development. A delegate from the Corvin Syndicate raised a tentacle. What about resistance from native populations? Kethvar's laugh was cold and confident. The most advanced civilizations we have detected barely understand nuclear fusion. Their weapons are crude chemical explosives. Any resistance will last mere hours against our fleets. The assembly was ready to vote when a voice cut through the noise like a blade. It was ancient and rough, speaking in the old tongue that few still understood. You speak of conquest as if you invented it, young Zephyrian. The hall fell silent. All eyes turned to the far corner, where a figure sat in shadows. Keeper Nalthos rarely spoke at council meetings. The being was older than most civilizations, a remnant from the galaxy's first age of expansion. His species had watched empires rise and fall for millions of years. Nalthos moved forward slowly, his ancient joints creaking. His skin looked like weathered stone, marked with scars from battles fought before most species had even evolved. I have seen this arrogance before. I have watched as proud empires ignored the warnings of their elders. Kethvar's confidence wavered slightly. Nobody interrupted a keeper lightly, but the Zephyrian was young and ambitious. Honored keeper, we respect your wisdom. But surely you understand that progress requires expansion. The galaxy has grown, peaceful under the guidance of civilized species like ours. Peaceful? Nalthos's laugh was like grinding stone. You think peace came naturally? You think the galaxy simply decided to be civilized on its own? The ancient being reached into his robes and pulled out a data crystal, older than any technology, in the hall. He placed it into the holographic projector. The display changed, showing symbols and writing that made several delegates step back in fear. This is from the Archive of First Laws, Nalthos said. Written when the galaxy was young and terrible things moved between the stars. Before your empires existed, before your species even had names, there were rules carved into reality itself. The symbols shifted and changed, finally resolving into text that the translation systems could barely process. Most of it came through as fragments and broken phrases, but one line appeared clearly in every language. Do not cross humans, for they are the shield that guards the light. Several delegates laughed nervously. Others looked confused. Kethvar's face showed open skepticism. Humans? The Zephyrian ambassador gestured dismissively. Keeper, with all due respect, there are no humans in the galaxy. If such a species ever existed, they are long extinct. Are they? Nalthos asked quietly. The question hung in the air like a challenge. The old being manipulated the hologram again, zooming in on one of the red dots marking potential conquest targets. A small system near the galaxy's edge, unremarkable except for a yellow star and several rocky planets. Sol system, Nalthos said. Third planet from its star. Your scouts reported radio signals and primitive nuclear technology. Perfect for strip mining, according to your reports. Kethvar nodded eagerly, happy to move away from ancient superstitions and back to practical matters. Exactly. The locals call their world Earth. Our intelligence suggests a single species dominates the planet. Bipedal mammals with basic tool, use in simple chemical rockets. They will pose no threat to our operations. Earth, Naltos repeated slowly, as if tasting the word. How interesting that you chose that system first. The resources are particularly rich there, Kethvar explained. Rare earth metals, abundant water, perfect gravity for most of our species. It will make an excellent base for further expansion. Around the hall, delegates nodded in agreement. The Sol system did look promising. Their own surveys had confirmed the Zephyrian findings. A primitive world, ripe for exploitation. Nalthos studied the hologram for a long moment. The other delegates grew impatient, eager to vote and claim their shares of the expansion profits. Finally, the ancient being spoke again. I was there when the first ships tried to conquer that blue world, he said quietly. I watched from the outer system as fleets larger than yours approached that unremarkable planet. I saw what happened to them. What are you talking about? Kethvar's patience was wearing thin. There are no records of any major conflicts in that system. No debris fields. No signs of ancient battles. No. Nalthos agreed. There would not be. They are very thorough when they clean up. The Keeper's words sent a chill through some of the older delegates, those whose species remembered fragments of ancient stories. But most of the assembly dismissed his warnings as the confused memories of a mind too old to function properly. Kethvar decided to end this nonsense before it could interfere with the vote. Honored Keeper, we thank you for sharing these historical perspectives, but we must base our decisions on current realities, not ancient myths. The Zephyrian Empire has the most advanced fleet in the galaxy. Our weapons can crack planets. Our shields can withstand anything these primitives might throw at us. I said the same thing once, Nalthos muttered, before I learned what happens when you wake sleeping giants. But his words were lost in the noise as delegates began discussing mining rights and profit shares. The vote was called, and the Zephyrian expansion was approved by an overwhelming majority. Only a few abstained, species old enough to remember, when the galaxy had been a much darker and more dangerous place. As the assembly dispersed, Nalthos remained in his seat, staring at the hologram of the Sol system. Other delegates hurried past him, excited about the wealth that awaited them in the outer rim. None of them noticed the ancient being's whispered words. They broke the oldest rule in the galaxy. The fools actually did it. 3 days later, the first Zephyrian scout ships entered the Sol system. Their sensors detected the primitive radio signals and crude nuclear technology just as expected. The third planet looked blue and peaceful from space, with swirling white clouds and vast oceans. It looked harmless. It looked defenseless. It looked like easy prey. Admiral Vextar of the Zephyrian Advance Fleet smiled as he gave the order to begin standard conquest procedures. In a few days, this unremarkable world would be another jewel in the Empire's crown. He had no idea that his ships had just crossed the most dangerous line in the galaxy. Admiral Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching Earth grow larger on the main screen. The planet looked exactly as the scouts had reported. Blue oceans, green and brown continents, white clouds swirling in predictable patterns. Nothing about it suggested any real threat. Distance to target, he asked his navigation officer. 30,000 kilometers in closing, Admiral. We are well within communication range. Vextar nodded. Standard procedure was simple and had worked on hundreds of worlds. First, they would broadcast surrender terms. Most species accepted immediately once they saw the size of the Zephyrian fleet. Those who refused would face a demonstration of superior firepower. After that, resistance usually collapsed within hours. Open communication channels, Vextar ordered. All frequencies. The communication officer worked at his console. Channels open, Admiral. Vextar straightened his uniform and stepped forward. He had given this speech so many times that he could recite it in his sleep. Primitive inhabitants of the third planet, you are now in the presence of the Zephyrian Empire. We claim this system and all its resources in the name of galactic civilization. You will surrender immediately and submit to Imperial authority. Resistance will be met with overwhelming force. You have 1 standard hour to respond. The bridge crew waited. Usually responses came quickly, either panicked babbling in local languages, desperate pleas for mercy, or silence as the natives realized how outmatched they were. This time the response came in perfect galactic standard, spoken with calm authority that made several officers look up in surprise. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. You have entered human space without authorization. Your presence here violates several interstellar treaties and constitutes an act of war. Withdraw your forces immediately or face the consequences. Vexitar blinked in confusion. The voice was female, speaking with the kind of confidence that came from real military training. But that was impossible. The intelligence reports were clear. This species barely had spaceflight capability. Sir, the sensor officer called out. I'm detecting multiple energy signatures approaching our position. Show me. The main screen split, showing tactical displays alongside the image of Earth. Red dots appeared on the scanner, moving toward the Zephyrian fleet with impossible speed, but visual scanners showed empty space. Where are they? Vextar demanded. I see the energy readings, but no ships. Unknown, Admiral. The signatures are definitely there, but our optical systems cannot lock onto them. Before Vextar could respond, the communication channel crackled again. The same calm female voice spoke, but now there was steel beneath the words. Admiral Vextar of the ZF Dominator. Your reputation precedes you. 17 conquered worlds in the past 5 years. 3 billion sentient beings enslaved or killed. Did you really think we would not know about your empire's crimes? The Zephyrian admiral felt cold fear creep up his spine. How could these primitives know his name, his ship, or his military record? Impossible, he whispered. Then louder. You are attempting to deceive us with stolen intelligence, but it will not work. We have fought species far more advanced than yours. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick. I tried diplomacy, Admiral Chen replied. My government hoped we could resolve this peacefully, but since you insist on the hard way. The energy signatures on the scanner suddenly stopped moving. For a moment, everything was quiet. Then space itself seemed to shimmer, and ships appeared. Vexitar had commanded fleets for 30 years. He had seen every type of vessel that the galaxy's civilizations could build, but he had never seen anything like the ships that now surrounded his fleet. They were sleek and dark, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. No visible weapons, ports, no obvious propulsion systems, no communication arrays. They moved with impossible grace, sliding through space like living things rather than mechanical constructs. How many? Vextar asked quietly. 50. No, wait. More are appearing. 100. 200. The sensor officer's voice cracked with strain. Admiral, I count over 500 ships and more keep materializing. Size comparison? Unknown. They are not reflecting our sensor pings properly. Energy output suggests they are comparable to our heavy cruisers, but the readings do not make sense. Vextar straightened his shoulders. Fear was natural when facing the unknown, but he was a Zephyrian officer. His empire had conquered the galaxy through superior technology and ruthless tactics. These humans might have better stealth systems than expected, but they were still primitives. All ships battle formation, he ordered. Charge primary weapons. Let us show these upstarts what happens when they challenge the empire. The Zephyrian fleet moved into attack position. 200 warships, each one capable of destroying a city from orbit. Their shields could withstand nuclear explosions. Their weapons could crack moons. The human ships did nothing. They simply waited. Fire, Vextar commanded. Energy beams lanced out from every Zephyrian ship. Plasma cannons, particle accelerators, and fusion torpedoes filled the space between the two fleets with deadly light. It was enough firepower to sterilize a planet. When the weapons fire cleared, the human ships remained exactly where they had been, undamaged, unmoved, as if the most powerful weapons in the galaxy were nothing more than flashlights. Impossible, Vextar breathed. Our turn, Admiral Chen said calmly. What happened next defied everything Vextar understood about space combat. The human ships did not fire visible weapons. Instead, they simply moved. One moment, the Zephyrian fleet was in perfect formation. The next, 3 of their heavy cruisers were drifting powerless, their hulls cut open with surgical precision. No explosions, no debris fields. Just clean cuts that left the ships intact but completely disabled. How did they? Vextar began. Another group of human ships flickered forward. More Zephyrian vessels went dark, their crews still alive but their ships completely helpless. Admiral, the tactical officer shouted. They are not destroying us. They are disabling our ships without harming the crews. Vextar realized the terrible truth. These humans were not firing wildly or fighting with desperate fury. They were demonstrating perfect control, surgical precision, and overwhelming technological superiority. They could have destroyed the entire Zephyrian fleet in seconds, but they chose to capture it instead. All ships emergency retreat. Vextar ordered. But when he tried to engage his ship's jump drive, nothing happened. The navigation officer checked his instruments with growing panic. Sir, our jump capabilities have been disabled. All ships report the same problem. We cannot leave. The system. Admiral Chen's voice filled the bridge one more time. Admiral Vextar, you and your crews will be treated according to the standards of civilized warfare. Your ships will be impounded and your soldiers interned until this conflict is resolved. I suggest you surrender now to avoid further embarrassment. Vextar looked around his bridge at his frightened officers. Half his fleet was already disabled. The other half was trapped in the system with no way to escape. They had been outmaneuvered, outgunned, and outwitted by a species their intelligence reports had dismissed as primitive. I do not understand, he said quietly. How is this possible? You made a mistake, Admiral, Chen replied. You assumed that because we hide our capabilities, we do not have them. You thought that because we choose peace, we cannot wage war. But most importantly, you broke the oldest rule in the galaxy. What rule? You crossed humans. We tried to warn you. Vextar's flagship shuddered as invisible forces took control of its systems. Around him, his crew prepared for capture, their faces filled with the kind of fear that came from realizing they had challenged something far beyond their understanding. As human boarding craft approached his ship, Vextar wondered if Admiral Chen was right. Had his empire really broken some ancient rule? And if so, what would be the consequences? He was about to find out. News of Admiral Vextar's defeat spread across the galaxy like wildfire. In the great halls of Nexus Prime, delegates whispered in shocked disbelief. The Zephyrian Empire's finest fleet, destroyed by primitives from an unremarkable world? It seemed impossible. Emperor Zefkar himself called an emergency session of his war council. The massive Zephyrian leader slammed his 4 fists onto the table, making his advisors jump. Explain this disaster, he roared. 200 of our best, ships defeated by natives with chemical rockets. General Mordak, commander of the Imperial fleet, studied the reports with growing confusion. My lord, the intelligence makes no sense. Our scouts confirmed that the humans had only basic nuclear technology. They should not have been capable of this level of resistance. Then our scouts were wrong, the Emperor growled, or these humans have been hiding their true capabilities. Either way, they have humiliated the Empire. This cannot stand. Defense Minister Kolrath cleared his throat nervously. My lord, perhaps we should consider that our first contact protocols were aggressive. These humans might be willing to negotiate if we approach them differently. The Emperor's eyes blazed with fury. Negotiate? The Zephyrian Empire does not negotiate with primitives who attack our fleets. We have conquered 300 worlds without ever retreating. I will not start now. He turned to General Mordak. How many ships can we mobilize for a full assault? The Grand Armada consists of 2,000 vessels, my lord. Every ship we have, including the Dreadnought-class battleships and the planet-killer missiles. Good. Deploy everything. I want that system turned to dust, and these humans made an example to the entire galaxy. But even as the Zephyrian Empire prepared its massive retaliation, strange reports began filtering in from across their territory. Ships were disappearing from supply routes. Research stations went silent without sending distress signals. Military outposts simply stopped responding to communications. At first, The Zephyrians assumed these were unrelated incidents, space pirates, equipment failures, or rebellions by conquered species. But patterns began to emerge that made their military leaders increasingly nervous. Captain Rexter was commanding a supply convoy near the Corvan border when his sensors detected an unknown contact. The object was small, about the size of a fighter craft, but it was moving faster than anything in the Imperial fleet. "Hail the unknown vessel," Rexidor ordered. There was no response. The object continued on its intercept course, closing the distance with impossible speed. "Sir, it is not responding to any communication attempts," his officer reported. "Should we consider it hostile?" Rexter studied the tactical display. One small ship against an entire convoy? It had to be some kind of scout or messenger craft. "Lock. Weapons on target," he decided. "If they will not identify themselves, we will—" The unknown ship flickered and vanished from sensors. "Where did it go?" Rexter demanded. Before anyone could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the bridge. System after system went offline. Engines stopped. Weapons powered down. Life support switched to emergency backup. "Report!" Rexter shouted. "Sir, something has taken control of our ship's systems. All primary functions are disabled." Through the viewports, Rexter could see that the same thing was happening to every ship in his convoy. One by one, they went dark and began drifting powerless through space. Then the unknown vessel reappeared, hovering motionless in front of Rexter's flagship. This close, he could see that it was unlike any ship in his experience. Sleek, dark, and completely silent. A communication channel opened. The voice that spoke was calm and professional. "Captain Rexter, your convoy was carrying weapons and supplies to reinforce the attack on Earth. This shipment will not reach its destination. Your crews will be transferred to escape pods and return to Zephyrian space with a message for your Emperor." "What message?" Rexter asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Tell him that humans do not forgive attacks on their homeworld. And tell him that this was just the beginning." Similar incidents occurred throughout Zephyrian space. Patrol ships found themselves facing impossible opponents who struck without warning and vanished without trace. Research facilities that developed new weapons woke up to find their projects mysteriously deleted, and their scientists relocated to comfortable but secure detention facilities. The pattern was clear to anyone paying attention. The humans were systematically dismantling the Zephyrian war machine with surgical precision. General Mordak stood before a holographic map of the Empire, watching red warning lights appear across their territory. Each light represented another facility attacked, another convoy captured, another outpost neutralized. "How are they doing this?" he asked his intelligence chief. "Our best estimates suggest they have at most a few hundred ships. We have thousands of installations across hundreds of systems. They cannot be everywhere at once." Intelligence Chief Valnar shook her head in confusion. "Sir, we are detecting human energy signatures in dozens of systems simultaneously. Either they have far more ships than we believed, or their technology allows them to move faster than our best calculations suggest is possible. What about their homeworld? Have we been able to penetrate their defenses?" "No, sir. Every probe we send to the Sol system simply disappears. We have no idea what happened to them." Emperor Zefkar burst into the room, his face purple with rage. "Status report." General Mordak gestured to the holographic map. "My lord, the humans have launched a coordinated campaign against our infrastructure. They are not attempting to conquer territory or establish bases. Instead, they are methodically destroying our ability to wage war." "Impossible. How can a single, primitive species challenge the entire empire?" "They are not primitive, my lord," Valnar said quietly. "Our intelligence was completely wrong. These humans possess technology that surpasses our own in every measurable way." The Emperor's arms trembled with fury. "I do not care if they have ships made of pure energy and weapons that bend time itself. The Grand Armada will crush them." But even as he spoke, more red lights appeared on the map. The humans were not slowing down. If anything, their attacks were becoming more frequent and more devastating. Across the galaxy, other civilizations watched the conflict with growing amazement and fear. The Zephyrian Empire had seemed invincible for centuries. Now they were being systematically dismantled by a species that most galactic powers had never heard of. In the archives of a dozen worlds, scholars began searching through ancient texts, looking for any reference to these mysterious humans. What they found made them very afraid. Old stories spoke of a species that had fought impossible wars and won them through pure determination and tactical genius. Legends told of beings who could adapt to any threat and overcome any enemy. Most disturbing of all were the warnings carved in stone on forgotten monuments. They sleep between the wars. Do not wake them. The guardians rest, but they do not forget. When the children of Earth arise, empires tremble. But the most common warning, found in the most ancient texts, was always the same. Do not cross humans, for they are the shield that guards the light. Keeper Nalthos sat in his chambers on Nexus Prime, listening to reports of the conflict. Around him, younger delegates demanded explanations, wanting to know how he had known this would happen. You warned us, Ambassador Trelvis of the Centauri, Republic said. You tried to tell them about the rule, but what does it mean? What are these humans? Nalthos was quiet for a long moment, remembering things he had hoped never to see again. Finally, he spoke. They are what stands between us and the dark. They always have been. And the Zephyrians just declared war on the wrong species. The old being turned to look out at the stars where distant flashes of light marked the ongoing battle. I just hope that when this is over, there is still a galaxy left to protect. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike any in recorded history. Representatives from hundreds of species packed the great hall of Nexus Prime, their voices rising in panic and confusion. The Zephyrian Empire was collapsing, and nobody understood how or why. Ambassador Kethvar, looking far less confident than he had weeks earlier, stood at the center of the hall. His blue skin had paled to an almost gray color, and his forearms shook as he spoke. Honored delegates, the Empire requests immediate military assistance against the human threat. Our forces are being systematically destroyed by an enemy using technology we do not understand. Murmurs of disbelief filled the chamber. The Corvan delegate raised a tentacle. How can primitives with chemical rockets threaten the most powerful empire in the galaxy? They are not primitives, Kethvar shouted, his composure finally breaking. Our intelligence was wrong. These humans possess capabilities that surpass anything we have ever encountered. They appear and disappear at will. Their weapons cut through our strongest shields like they are made of paper. They can disable our systems without destroying them, capturing entire fleets without losing a single ship of their own. The Centauri representative stood up. Even if what you say is true, why should we involve ourselves in your war? The Zephyrian Empire has conquered and enslaved hundreds of species. Perhaps these humans are simply providing some balance to galactic power. Other delegates began voicing similar sentiments. Few species in the galaxy had fond memories of Zephyrian expansion. Many privately hoped to see the Empire brought down, though they were afraid to say so publicly. But fear was beginning to outweigh satisfaction. If humans could destroy the Zephyrian Empire so easily, what did that mean for the rest of the galaxy? This is not just about the Empire, Kethvar pleaded. These humans are a threat to everyone. They have technology that should not exist. Ships that can travel faster than light without using jump drives. Weapons that ignore our most advanced defenses. If they can do this to us, they can do it to anyone. The hall erupted in arguments and accusations. Some species demanded military action against Earth. Others insisted on attempting diplomatic contact. A few suggested that maybe the galaxy should simply accept human dominance and hope for the best. Through all the chaos, one figure sat silent in the shadows. Keeper Nalthos had remained quiet since the session began, but now the ancient being slowly rose to his feet. The hall gradually fell silent. Even in their panic, the delegates respected the wisdom of someone who had lived through the rise and fall of dozens of civilizations. Nalthos walked to the center of the chamber, his movements slow but purposeful. When he spoke, His voice carried clearly through the vast space. "You want to understand what is happening," he said. "You want to know why the most powerful empire in modern galactic history is being torn apart by a species you thought was primitive. You demand explanations for technology that should not exist and tactics that defy everything you know about warfare." He paused, looking around the hall at hundreds of frightened faces. "Very well. I will tell you the truth, but understand that once you know it, you cannot unknow it. And you may not like what it means for your civilizations." Nalthos activated a holographic projector, far more advanced than anything else in the chamber. The display showed the galaxy as it was millions of years ago, when the stars were younger and the space between them was filled with different kinds of ships. Long ago, when most of your species were still crawling in primordial seas, the galaxy was ruled by beings called the Void Shepherds. They were not like us. They did not build civilizations or create art or seek knowledge. They consumed. Everything they touched turned to ash and emptiness. The hologram changed, showing massive dark ships that dwarfed anything in the modern galaxy. Where they passed, entire star systems went dark. The shepherds fed on life itself. They would harvest entire worlds, draining every living thing to fuel their expansion into other galaxies. For millions of years, they spread like a cancer across the universe, leaving nothing but dead space in their wake. Several delegates gasped in horror. The ancient ships shown in the hologram were larger than space stations, their surfaces covered in structures that hurt to look at. Every species that tried to resist them was exterminated. Civilizations that had existed for millions of years were wiped out in days. The shepherds seemed unstoppable, unlimited in their power and cruelty. Althos paused the hologram on an image of a small blue world orbiting a yellow star. Then they encountered Earth. The chamber was completely silent now. Every being in the hall stared at the familiar image of the human homeworld. The humans of that time were not the same as the ones you see today. They had spread across their galaxy, building ships and weapons designed for one purpose: the complete destruction of the Void Shepherds. They were not conquerors or explorers. They were soldiers, bred and trained for a war that had lasted longer than some stars burn. The hologram showed battles on a scale that made modern warfare look like children playing with toys. Fleets of millions of ships clashing in the void between galaxies. Weapons that could destroy entire star systems. Defenses that could withstand the death of suns. For 10 million years, humans fought the shepherds across 3 galaxies. They lost billions of their people. They sacrificed entire worlds to stop the shepherds' advance. But they never stopped fighting. And they never stopped adapting. The images showed human ships evolving, becoming sleeker and more advanced with each generation. Their tactics grew more sophisticated, their technology more powerful. In the end, humanity won. They did not just defeat the shepherds, they erased them completely from existence. Every dark ship destroyed, every feeding ground turned to empty space. Every trace of their presence removed from the universe. The hologram showed the final battle, a conflict so massive that it tore holes in space itself. When it was over, the darkness was gone, and only human ships remained. But the victory came at a terrible cost. Humanity had become something terrifying in their quest to save the galaxy. They had weapons that could unmake reality itself, ships that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, the power to reshape time and space according to their will. Nalthos looked around the silent chamber, so they made a choice. Instead of ruling the galaxy they had saved, they chose to hide. They dismantled their great fleets, sealed away their most terrible weapons, and retreated to their small corner of space. They allowed new civilizations to rise and develop naturally, watching from the shadows to make sure the darkness never returned. The hologram changed again, showing the galaxy as it was now. Peaceful, civilized, protected by rules and treaties that kept the great powers in balance. For millions of years, humans have been the silent guardians of galactic peace. They allowed you to forget about the shepherds, to build your empires and pursue your ambitions without fear of cosmic annihilation. The oldest rule in the galaxy was not made by any of your civilizations. It was carved into reality itself by those who remembered what happened when humans went to war. Ambassador Kethvar found his voice. But they seem so primitive. Our scouts detected only basic technology. Nalthos's ancient face showed something that might have been a smile. They wanted you to see only basic technology. Do you think the species that defeated beings capable of destroying galaxies would have trouble hiding their capabilities from your scouts? The terrible truth began to sink in. Every delegate in the hall realized that they had been living under the protection of beings they had dismissed as primitive. Worse, one of their own had just declared war on their ancient guardians. What will they do to us? Someone whispered. That depends, Nalthos replied, on whether the Zephyrian Empire is willing to accept defeat, or if they will force humanity to reveal the full extent of their power. He looked directly at Kethvar. I suggest you contact your emperor immediately. Tell him to surrender unconditionally and beg for mercy, because if humans decide that your empire poses a permanent threat to galactic peace, the Keeper did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. Everyone in the hall could imagine what beings capable of erasing the Void Shepherds might do to a mere interstellar empire. As the session dissolved into chaos, only one thought echoed through the minds of every delegate present. They had broken the oldest rule in the galaxy, and now they would discover why that rule existed in the first place. Emperor Zephyr stood on the bridge of his personal dreadnought, watching his grand armada prepare for the final assault on Earth. 2,000 ships filled the space around him, the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. Every weapon, every shield, every piece of advanced technology the Zephyrian Empire possessed was represented in this massive force. Final systems check, he commanded. All ships report ready, my lord, General Mordak replied. The planet killer missiles are armed and targeted. When we finish here, there will be nothing left of this system but debris. The Emperor's forearms clenched into fists. The humans had humiliated his empire, destroyed his fleets, and made him look weak before the entire galaxy. But this would end it. No species, no matter how advanced, could stand against the combined might of 2,000 warships. Open a channel to the planet, he ordered. The communication officer nodded. Channel open, my lord. Emperor Zephyr straightened to his full height, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had conquered hundreds of worlds. Humans of Earth. You have fought well, but your resistance ends now. You face the grand armada of the Zephyrian Empire. Surrender immediately, and I will grant you quick deaths. Continue to resist, and I will ensure your entire species suffers before the end. For a long moment, there was only silence from Earth. Then a familiar voice responded. Admiral Sarah Chen sounded as calm as ever, but there was something different in her tone. Something that made even the Emperor's experienced officers shift uncomfortably. Emperor Zephyr, we offered you peace. We gave you every opportunity to withdraw and avoid this conflict. But you chose to escalate. You chose to threaten our homeworld with total destruction. I chose victory, the Emperor snarled. Your tricks and stealth technology will not save you this time. I have enough firepower here to crack planets. Yes, Admiral Chen agreed quietly. You do, and that changes everything. Before the Emperor could ask what she meant, his sensor officer called out in confusion. Sir, I am detecting massive energy signatures throughout the system, far larger than anything we have seen before. Show me. The tactical display lit up with contacts. Not hundreds this time, but thousands. Ships larger than anything in the Zephyrian fleet materialized around Earth like a metal constellation. They had been there all along, hidden by technology that made their previous stealth capabilities look primitive. But these were not the sleek, dark vessels that had been harassing Zephyrian forces. These ships were massive, angular, and covered in weapon systems that made the Emperor's dreadnought look like a toy. They moved with the kind of ponderous grace that spoke of unimaginable power. How many? The Emperor whispered. 10,000, the sensor officer reported, his voice cracking. Maybe more. Sir, these ships are enormous. The smallest ones are larger than our heavy cruisers. The largest—" He paused, checking his readings. "The largest are the size of small moons." General Mordak stared at the display in disbelief. "This is impossible. Where were they hiding? How did our scouts miss a fleet this size?" Admiral Chen's voice filled the bridge again. "You want to know where we were hiding? We were here all along. Watching. Waiting. Hoping you would come to your senses before we had to show you what humanity looks like when we stop pretending to be weak." One of the massive human ships moved forward, dwarfing everything around it. Weapon ports opened along its hull, revealing technology that hurt to look at directly. "For millions of years, we have been the guardians of this galaxy," Chen continued. "We defeated threats that could destroy reality itself. We chose peace over dominance, protection over conquest. We allowed younger species to grow and develop without interference." The Emperor found his voice. "Lies. If you possessed such power, why hide it? Why not rule the galaxy as you deserve?" "Because we learned something during our war with the Void Shepherds," Chen replied. "Power corrupts. The stronger you become, the easier it is to believe that might makes right. We chose to be protectors instead of rulers, guardians instead of gods." More human ships began moving into position, their formations precise and overwhelming. The Zephyrian fleet, which had seemed invincible just moments before, now looked pathetically small by comparison. "But you," Chen's voice turned cold. "You brought planet-killer weapons to our homeworld. You threatened to exterminate our entire species. That crosses a line we cannot allow anyone to cross." "All ships, fire!" Emperor Zefkar screamed. The Grand Armada unleashed everything it had. Energy beams that could vaporize mountains, missiles that could crack continents, weapons that could boil away oceans. For 30 seconds, the space between the fleets blazed with enough destructive power to sterilize a dozen worlds. When the weapons fire cleared, the human ships remained exactly where they had been, undamaged, unmoved. Their shields had absorbed the entire assault without even flickering. "Our turn," Admiral Chen said quietly. What happened next redefined every concept of warfare that the galaxy possessed. The human ships did not fire conventional weapons. Instead, they seemed to reach out with invisible hands and simply dismantle their targets. Zephyrian ships came apart like puzzles being taken apart by a patient child. Hulls separated into component molecules. Engines shut down as their atomic structures were rearranged. Weapon systems turned to harmless scrap, metal. In less than 5 minutes, the Grand Armada of the Zephyrian Empire ceased to exist as a fighting force. 2,000 ships floated dead in space, their crews alive but their vessels completely helpless. Emperor Zefkar stared at his useless controls in absolute shock. His mighty dreadnought, pride of the Imperial fleet, had been reduced to a powerless hulk without taking a single point of damage that he could see. "How?" he gasped. "Molecular disassembly beams," Admiral Chen explained, her voice now carrying a teacher's patience. "We can take apart any matter we choose, down to the atomic level, then reassemble it however we wish. It is not even our most advanced technology." Human ships began moving closer to the disabled Zephyrian vessels. Boarding craft launched, but these were unlike anything the Emperor had ever seen. They passed through the hulls of his ships as if the metal was not there, depositing human soldiers directly onto Zephyrian bridges. Within minutes, every ship in the Grand Armada had been boarded and secured. The Zephyrian crews found themselves facing humans in armor that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal, carrying weapons that looked more like works of art than instruments of war. But the humans did not act like conquerors. They provided medical aid to injured Zephyrians, ensured that life support systems continued functioning, and treated their prisoners with professional courtesy. They were terrifyingly efficient but not cruel. Admiral Chen's image appeared on every screen in the defeated fleet. She looked tired, as if the demonstration of human power had cost her something. "Emperor Zefkar, your empire is finished as a military threat. We have simultaneously disabled every Zephyrian warship, space station, and military installation in your territory. Your weapons factories have been converted to produce medical supplies and construction equipment. Your soldiers have been relocated to comfortable detention facilities where they will be retrained for civilian occupations. The Emperor wanted to rage, to threaten, to maintain some shred of dignity. But he had seen what humans could do when they stopped holding back. His voice came out as barely a whisper. "What will you do with us?" "That depends on you," Chen replied. "The Zephyrian people will be allowed to govern themselves, but under strict supervision. You will never again be permitted to build weapons of mass destruction or wage wars of conquest. Your empire is over, but your species can survive and even thrive if you choose cooperation over conflict." She paused, looking directly at the Emperor through the screen. "As for you personally, you will stand trial for crimes against sentient species. The families of the billions you have killed deserve justice." The transmission ended, leaving the Emperor alone with the ruins of his ambitions. Across the galaxy, other civilizations watched in awe and terror as news of the Zephyrian defeat spread. The most powerful empire in modern history had been destroyed in a matter of hours by beings they had dismissed as primitives. On Nexus Prime, Keeper Nalthos sat in the emergency council session, watching as delegates struggled to understand what had just happened. "What do we do now?" Ambassador Trelvis asked. "How do we interact with beings who could destroy us as easily as swatting insects?" The ancient keeper considered the question carefully before answering. "The same way we always have," he said finally. "With respect, honesty, and the understanding that some beings choose to protect rather than dominate. Humanity has just reminded the galaxy why the old rule existed." He looked around at the frightened faces surrounding him. "They broke the oldest rule in the galaxy. Do not cross humans. Now you have seen what happens when that rule is ignored. I suggest that all of your civilizations remember this lesson." In the Sol system, human ships were already beginning to fade back into invisibility. The massive fleet that had destroyed the Grand Armada was dispersing, returning to whatever hidden places they had come from. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of her flagship, looking out at Earth. Her beautiful, peaceful homeworld, which had just been defended by weapons that could reshape reality itself.